Week 1.
They could have 3 losses by now.
I don't know about that.
They are not that
For
good.
Florida State in there, I would say yes to that, what you just said.
One return by Caleb Downs. And he finds a seam. He makes the punter look silly. Caleb Downs, show him what you got. Touchdown, Bama.
5-minute drive now for UTEP. And they will keep it on the ground. Awad just gets pile-driven by Stutzman.
Really haven't even tried from the shotgun. That throw's intercepted. Pierce down the sideline. Touchdown.
Claiborne, the sophomore, has 1 score so far this season. Rivers will buy a little bit of time. Falling down, lost the football. Play is still live. And recovered by the Monarchs. Lamarian James will take it the other way for the ODU touchdown.
Welcome back to Devy IDP Grind. I am your host, Hollywood Titan. I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. Sorry we wasn't on last week. I just wasn't able to do it, but we're back this week, and we'll be back every Wednesday at 8. What's going on, Justice?
I am. I'm fired up on a Wednesday evening, man.
You are?
I am. I'm really fucking. I'm really fired up. Sorry.
A little bit.
And to make matters worse, I'm wearing a heart monitor. Yeah, I've been having some issues, and I have to wear a heart monitor for the next 14 days, and so yeah.
Oh, great to hear that. I hope you feel better, man.
Thanks.
I'll try my damnedest to not poke the bear tonight. Then I don't.
Hey, it's all good, brother. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Oh, anyway, we're into week 3 now of the college football season. The first 2 weeks, well, I guess the first 3, if you count week 0, has passed, but we've talked to you since then. We'll get right into it. There's lots to talk about here. Good news for Cincinnati Bearcats defensive tackle Dante Corleone. He had been diagnosed with blood clots in his lungs back in June, and it was indefinite when he might return. Well, I guess he got all that cleared up. He was given a clean bill of health, as good a clean a bill of health as you could get, and he was given the okay to return, and he actually suited up for the Bearcats. So that's good to hear. The NCAA is considering adding a 5th year of eligibility in all sports, which would eliminate the national letter of intent. If they do that, then that's going to give players possibly 6-7 years, because you could have a red shirt and you could still have a medical red shirt. So
it's freaking ridiculous, man. Seriously, like, I don't know, like at this point,
if something wants to happen like COVID again, they would give them another year for that. If something wants to happen,
why don't they just go to contracts like the NFL, and the dude can play in college for 20 years? I mean, come on, like seriously, like I don't know, like at this point, like they have stepped beyond the whole purpose of it, right? With that kind of crap.
Yeah, at some point they've got to draw a line and say, "Hey, this is the max amount of years. I'm sorry, but this is the max amount of years that you can play, and you got to move on."
Yeah, it's well, and you know who that hurts? That hurts the high school kids, man. That hurts. That's who it hurts.
Yeah.
Because these players sticking around longer, there's less spots available.
Yep, and in return, that'll fire the transfer portal up even more, because, like you said, these kids are not going to want to sit there for 4 or 5 years. They're going to want to play, so they're going to look to go wherever they can play. So it's just like one domino into the next, and the NCAA is crumbling. Everything they touch, it just makes things worse, seems like. But and sticking with the NCAA, the last time we were here, we were talking about Oklahoma State putting a little QR code decal on the back of their helmet. Well, the NCAA's banned that, as they view this as advertising and commercial markings, which by NCAA rules is not allowed. So, no QR codes on the back of the helmets for any of these teams. Um, the SEC has approved mandatory injury reports, and this may be the biggest news yet. But they've approved mandatory injury reports effective immediately for football, men and women's basketball. Schools must submit reports 3 days before the game, and after that daily up until 90 minutes before the game. So 3 days before they got to have it submitted. It's got to be updated every day, all the way up to 90 minutes before the game. Fines for inaccurate or late reports range from start at 25,000 all the way up to 100K.
Well, and the MAC's doing it too, but I don't know if anybody has that fine stuff, and that's an excellent point, right? Because
Right.
as someone else, as Clint pointed out to me, remember in the NFL when that one year when Tom Brady or I mean Bill Belichick put Tom Brady on the injury report every single week,
Yes.
and then he got in trouble for doing that, right?
Right.
Like that's what college players are. That's what college coaches will start doing, right? They'll start doing some crap like that, listing the whole starting lineup every single week.
Right. And from what I could tell, as of right now, this is just for conference games. So I don't think like the SEC. I don't think these teams are required to have them for these early games where you're playing Division twos and or whoever. Even we didn't have to have one for North Carolina State. Tennessee did. So I don't think it starts until conference play starts.
The Big
But I
Ten does it
think,
for every game. I'm pretty sure, don't they? Whether it's a
oh
conference
wow.
game or not.
So, I do think that's where this is going. It's going to be required for every single game, and we know why. It's partly to do with the gambling situation. That's kind of where the crack opened. So, but I'm all for it because, especially in college, we talked about this a minute ago, and many other times. How hard is it to try to sift through freaking articles or listen to radio shows or podcasts to sift through all this stuff just to see if your players are playing or not. And then 9 times out of 10, you think he's playing, you put him in there, and he still don't play. So I think for fantasy sports, this will help. For gambling, it'll help. And I think that's the two biggest proponents for this, right? Of course, gambling's leading the way. Sorry, I can't speak, but gambling leads the way. But I think fantasy sports has should be recognized too for this because I think there's a huge impact and push from that community. Hey, we can't set lineups because we don't know if Joe Blow's playing, or we can't put a substitute in because we don't know if Joe Smith has broke his arm is still out or whatever. So I think as much as gambling has a lot to do with this, I think fantasy, and I guess maybe you can lump the two together because a lot of people bet on that too. But I think fantasy sports has pushed this, and I'm here for it. I mean, as a fantasy player, as a gambler too, I'm all for that, and they should. I can't remember who I saw, but I did see somebody that it was like the NFL. The other night in the San Francisco game, Jordan Mason had such a big game, and apparently he didn't find out till Monday night was the game. Apparently, sometime Monday he found out he was going to be the starter. Well, in an after game interview, he said he knew Friday that he was going to start. So that goes against the whole thing of an injury report, right? So, and I think that's what you'll see when it says inaccurate here. I think they're going to hold these coaches, these teams accountable for accurate reports, or they're going to start getting fines. Kind of like you was talking about the Bill Belichick thing with Tom Brady. They start doing things wrong, they're going to fine them. Per Ball State, Mizzou transferred defensive lineman Kyle Montgomery is now eligible to play after previous uncertainties regarding transfer of credits. It's unknown whether Montgomery will start against Miami this Saturday. I haven't seen anything other than that, but I think that's where we're at right now. The hope is he would be able to play, but and my dog's going crazy in there. We got a couple injuries.
Going back to the SEC and now the MAC doing it, right? Like, what do you think the
Right.
excuses for the other conferences? If the MAC can do it, like, what do you think the excuses for the other conferences not doing it is?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what your excuse me. I don't know what reason you would come up with to say, no, we're not doing this, or this is why we've not done it. Because I think once, no disrespect to the MAC, but once the SEC said, hey, we're doing this, that kind of forces everybody else to do it. And if you've got, and like you said, if you've got a conference like the MAC, again, no disrespect, but if you've got a conference like that that's willing and able to do it, then I don't think you, as an outside conference or another conference, however you want to say it, I don't think you really have a leg to stand on and say, hey, we can't do this, or we're not going to do it. I don't know what that reason would be to answer your question. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, I can see other conferences not wanting to do it just because, especially like the Sun Belt or them, because they don't want to give up like a competitive advantage, I guess, right? I think, I mean, you got the SEC doing it, the Big Ten doing it, the ACC and the Big 12 are going to have to do it, right?
Right.
But I can see like the G5 conferences, like until someone or I can see them waiting until someone forces them to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't.
Now that I do get that, the competitive advantage, and if nobody's going to force you to do it, then why would you do it, right? But I think, again, going back to where I was at, the gambling, the fantasy sports, I just don't see a scenario where they're going to let that slide. Not after you've already got one of the big boys on board doing it. I think they're going to tell others, hey, this is how this is going to work.
I'm looking at it right now, the SEC one. I'm looking at the MAC. I'm looking at the Big Ten and the SEC. The SEC is already ready. It's already there for this coming Saturday. The other two don't have anything for this week. Yeah, so like Jake, I only know how to pronounce his name. Ibieta is out for LSU. Deshaun Womack questionable. West Weeks questionable. South Carolina, Andrew Colasurdo doubtful. Emory Ford probable. Scooby Williams questionable for Texas A&M. For Florida, Jakeem Jackson defensive back out. Asa Turner defensive back out. Amon Covington defensive back out. Braden Slade defensive back out. Jamari Lyons defensive lineman out. Sherrill Denson defensive back questionable. Bryce Thornton defensive back questionable. TJ Searcy edge questionable. And Devin Moore DB questionable. Georgia, wow, a lot of Michael Williams doubtful. Defensive lineman Jordan Hall questionable. Xavier McLeod defensive line questionable. Warren Brinson defensive line questionable. Kentucky linebacker Devin Smith out. Defensive lineman Darian Henry Young out. Defensive lineman Josiah Hayes out. It's offense. Maxwell Hairston, defensive back probable. Keyshawn Silver, defensive lineman probable. And those are the only three. Those are the only three available. And you're right. They're playing SEC teams. So you're absolutely right. They're not putting those out for non-conference games.
Right, and those are early. I'm surprised you're seeing those now because they don't have to put those out till Thursday. So you got Thursday, Friday.
It looks like these ones are. It says these ones were updated at 7:10 Central, so just about an hour or 10 minutes or 20 minutes ago, I guess.
Yeah. And where was that at you're looking?
I'll send you the link, but secsports.com/reports.
Okay, awesome. So with that, I may, like I said, I can't do it with everybody until everybody's on board, but maybe I can start using these reports and updating my rankings in the comments, maybe to let you know who's in, who's out. But staying with that, defensive end slash linebacker, Oklahoma State, Colin Oliver's out with a foot injury. Um, there is several others. I've been working on my rankings. I was telling Justice there's several others. Reuben Bain Jr.'s out with a soft tissue issue. You got Michael Williams who missed last week with an ankle. You've got Marlo Wax with a lower leg injury. Um, and then and on Colin Oliver, it looks like it could be a month up to the whole season. We've not gotten full clarity on that, but it kind of looks from what we've seen, it's going to be the whole year. So I hate to see that, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of injuries. So maybe I can get these reports if I can get them all into narrowed down to just like the conference official report. Then maybe I could start adding them into my notes. But I am updating the rankings as I go and making little notes on the ones that are injured or whatever. So be sure to check that out. And then of course we got one more here, and I'm gonna let Justice talk about it. Jason Henderson did not play last week.
Yeah, and actually, I tweeted it out from my G5 Hive account, and then I retweeted it from my account. But when I got to my seats, I don't know, about 15 minutes or so before kickoff last week, like immediately noticed he was not dressed out, and so I tweeted it at that time. He did not play the entire game. If you watch the game against South Carolina, he only played like every other series. And it was kind of, I mean, it was kind of clear to me like he was not himself. And you know, saw his mom actually at the game. But you know, she didn't really say much other than Jason's really hard headed, which I think we can all appreciate, right? But you know, I got, you know, the G5 Hive got media credentials for Old Dominion football. I used those on Saturday. I attended the post game press conference, and of course, I didn't ask any questions because number one, I walked in late, so I was like, I better just sit here and shut up. But someone else did ask about Jason, and you know, Ricky Ryan doesn't discuss injuries, so he didn't really say much other than he said, we'll just continue to evaluate that on a daily basis. I can tell you from my perspective and like what I would do in a fantasy league if I own Jason Henderson. Number one, like we should all petition Fantrax that he should have the red flag, right? You know, I mean, every other player when they don't play a game, either they get injured during the game and keep playing to get the red flag. This dude didn't even play the game, still doesn't have the red flag. He's probably not going to get it, which is a whole nother issue. But yeah, so if you own Jason Henderson, I encourage you to email Fantrax and ask him why he doesn't have the red flag. But nonetheless, how I'm approaching it is he will firmly sit on my bench until he plays in a game, and it proves to me that he's 100%, because he
I'll
gave
gladly
me
waste that roster spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I didn't start him anywhere in the league last week just because I saw what happened in week 1. I'm like, I'm not dealing with that again. And so I know our good buddy Sal picked up Koa, and I don't even want to try to pronounce his last name. Noah Toa Laz, something like that. But anyway, Koa had a big game last week, 18 tackles. He started in place of Jason Henderson, and so he may very well be productive while Jason is out. But as soon as Jason comes back, he goes back to getting you 0 points. Just so you need to know that know that going forward. And it could be another situation where it was like the week before, where both him and Koa play, right? And then from a fantasy perspective, neither one of them is productive. I just don't know, right? I mean, Jason Henderson does have a redshirt year. Whether he will use that or not, I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I've never talked to the young man. I don't know what's important to him. I assume he has NFL aspirations. I assume he'd also like to be the career leader in tackles for the NCAA, right? And if he wants to break those records, he can't miss too many games. I think he's already played he's already missed like a game and a half essentially. So now he's down to 10 games. So I feel like he'd have to play all 10 games and be 100% Jason Henderson to break that record. Now it should be noted, and I don't know if there's an asterisk in the record book, but the current record holder, you know how many years of college football he played?
3?
5. It was Carlton Marshall from Troy. We
talked about this. Yeah.
He got the COVID year, and so he broke Luke Kuechly's record. And he did it.
I remember that now.
Henderson would do it in 4 years, so he was healthy. There's no doubt in my mind he would do it. But I don't know if that.
I guess it would come down to his draft grade evaluation too. Like if he doesn't get a really good draft evaluation grade, maybe that kind of pushes him to come back for another year with the possibility of trying to break the record or whatever. I mean,
but he has to make that decision now, right? Because you can only play in 4 games in redshirt. He's already burned a game, so he only has 3 more games where if he wanted to redshirt, where he could even hope to do that, right? So I really don't know what's going to happen, and whatever happens is not going to shock me. It wouldn't shock me if he sits out the rest of the year and then plays the last 3 games, right? And basically redshirts this year, and then comes back next year and breaks the record. There's also no guarantee if he redshirts that he comes back to Old Dominion, right? He could go somewhere else.
That's true.
Basically use those last 3 games as an audition to say, hey, I'm back. I'm 100%. I'm good. I'm back. Show me the money. That's a possibility too. I don't really know. Also wouldn't shock me to see him out there against Virginia Tech, but I'm certainly not expecting that this week. And so I don't know, just an interesting situation. It can play out a lot of ways, and I gotta think even before the injury, what do you think his draft stock was, right? I mean, I'm no expert, but he's maybe a 6th, 7th round pick at best, right? I don't know, right?
I think he would. I think his max would probably be the 5th. Somewhere at 5th, 6th, 7th. I think you're right. That's kind of where his value is.
And that was before the injury, right?
Okay with that, then maybe he says, "I'll come back another year," which. He would have, like you said, he would have to go ahead and redshirt now because you can't wait till then and do it and play all those games.
Right, you got to play. You can only play 4 games.
Right. Our friend Dougie says, "Fan tracks and do the right thing. You're living in crazy land." Yes, Justice is living in crazy land. And he also says these reports will be huge. And I'm assuming he's more people would be willing to play college in universities.
Play college. I think is what he's trying to say. Is more people will be willing to play college fantasy football if this was more of the mainstream. Absolutely.
Well, we hear it all the time, right? That's one of the biggest complaints that we hear is injuries, right? I started so didn't play.
I'd say that's one of the biggest issues. There's several other issues. A lot of people it's just overwhelming. It's just way overwhelming, right? 134 teams, 100 plus players on every roster. It's definitely overwhelming compared to NFL. I will say this though: if you do the work to be in one college fantasy league, you should be in more because it's not more work. You already did the work, right? So make that, use that work to your advantage and be in more leagues. That's just my personal opinion. It's to me, it's a lot of work to be in one league. And so for me, I don't know, if I'm going to do that amount of work, I'd do it for multiple leagues. But
yeah, me too. I
so
feel the
yeah,
same way.
stay
If you're putting
tuned.
in
Stay
that type
tuned.
of effort to do it,
If I get to the Virginia Tech game and he's dressed out, I'll let you know he's dressed out. But I'm not planning on putting Jason Henderson into a lineup until I see it on the field.
yeah, you just about can't have to. I don't know how you could, in good conscience, and be okay. Say, okay, I'm putting him in the lineup. He's going to play until you actually, like you said, actually see him suit up and get back out there. But we want to thank you all for helping us grow. Our follower count is starting to trickle up. It's starting to get more. Our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTube, all that's beginning to grow. Uh, Thank you for that. Spread it around. Spread your links around. Share. Tell more people to join. Thank you for that. Our players of the week. So we're going to do week 1 and week 2 since we wasn't here last week. Um, Week 1, you had Mike Green, defensive end for Marshall, 9 tackles, 2 solos, 1.5 TFLs, 1.5 sacks. Uh, and I had Peter Woods, defensive tackle for Clemson, 6 tackles, 5 solos, 2.5 TFLs, and a sack. I know he's listed as a D tackle, but they're moving him around on that line to try to take advantage of matchups. So keep an eye on your eligibility. Maybe you can get him in at defensive end, which I would rather play him at defensive tackle because that's where his value is. But he's going to have some value as an edge too. So that was our player of the week, our defensive players of the week for week 1. And then for week 2, you had Jordan Pollard, linebacker for San Jose State, 17 tackles, 9 solos, a TFL, a PBU. And then I went with Javari Ritzy, defensive end from North Carolina, 2 tackles, both were solos, both were TFLs, and both were sacks. And with those 2 sacks, that gives him 5 on the season because he had 3 in week 1. So he now has 5 sacks on the year and is currently leading the NCAA in sacks. So felt like I'd give him a little love there. They were a lot of big time performances this week, a lot of multiple. As I'm doing the rankings, there's a lot of multiple players with 10, 12, 15 plus tackles. So big weeks. There's some names. Maybe go check your waiver wires. Maybe they're still out there. You can pick them up, especially if you see, like Pollard at linebacker. I think you definitely go pick him up after this performance. Peter Woods, if you're in a position specific league where you have to start defensive tackles, I would go get him. And then, of course, the ends, Green and Ritchie. So just check your waiver wires. You never know who's available and who might be out there. But that's our defensive players of the week.
One thing I just wanted to
like
add, Mike Green, man, that dude's like freaking tearing it up, brother. He was someone I was pretty high on this offseason. I added him. I don't know if you noticed, but I owned him. I own him in our listener league. I own him in all the leagues I'm in. And he was, I don't know. Hey, it's on me. I didn't share it with anybody. I didn't share it with anybody because I wanted that information for myself. But I'll be straight up honest with you. Like,
hey,
but
do
man,
what you got to do sometimes.
He's tearing it up. I think he's got almost like 3.5, 4 sacks on the season. Man, like he's tearing it up. But we have wins and losses, right? I was super high on Mike Green, and that panned out for me. And I was also super high on linebacker Stephen Catledge from Troy. Had him in every league too. And that one, blew up in my face. He didn't do squat. He's not even the starting linebacker, and he's like playing like less than 10 snaps a game. And so I was hoping that he would be productive, and he was. And so I guess the point is we have hits and misses, right? So I didn't share my hit, right, with Mike Green, but I also didn't go tell people to go pick up Steven Catledge, who was a bust. So, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. I mean, the benefit to me, I guess, in both of these examples, I didn't spend like I got these guys like with my last 2 picks in the draft. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't spend a lot of money to get them to begin with. So I'll take that. I'll take a hit rate of 50%. But we all have wins and losses, and Mike Green, even if it's only I was the only one that knew, like that, I feel like super validated that he's doing so well. But anyway.
Right. Yeah, so the AP poll's out for this week. I don't know if you've had time to look at it yet, but Georgia's 1. Texas moves up a spot to 2. Ohio State drops a spot to 3. Alabama stays at 4. Ole Miss moves up 1 to 5. Missouri moves up 3 to 6. I don't get that. Tennessee moves up 7 to number 7. Penn State stays at 8. Oregon drops 2 spots to 9, and Miami moves up 2 spots to number 10. If I'm Missouri, I would be very, very freaking cautious this week. They are at home, but they got Boston College, and Boston College is they're not a pushover this year. That team can beat them if they're not real careful. That's an upset alert special. Me personally, I hope Boston College does it. I hope they beat the brakes off of them. But not sure if you've seen your thoughts on the AP poll. I know we kind of mention it each week.
No,
USC's 11, Utah's 12.
I haven't looked at it lately. I remember us talking preseason.
The 2 big droppers.
Remember we talked about Florida State. Like, hey, they're like freaking, like, yeah, they're way too high. I don't know. Like, I'm looking at it now. Like, I don't know. I think Arizona's too high. Boston College is too high. I mean, and they're not even that high. I just don't think they should be ranked personally. I mean, I don't know if you saw that game against Northern Arizona. Arizona did not look good. No, so
they did not.
I don't know. Kansas State, like Tulane got jobbed. Like, I think the referee got paid off or something, right? Like, they lost that game. The freaking refs won the game for Kansas State, and they move up 3 spots to number 14. I mean, Penn State.
I don't get that either.
Penn State almost lost to Bowling Green, and they stay at number 8.
Like, they were trailing at the half.
Notre Dame stays in the top 25 after losing to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois gets in at number 25. Notre Dame stays at number 18. Like, it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense today.
Now, Notre Dame did drop 13 spots. They dropped from 5 to 18.
But, as far as I'm concerned, Northern Illinois should be higher than them.
I think so, too, yes. Michigan dropped as well. Now theirs is a quality loss since they lost to Texas. But they dropped 7 spots from 10 to 17. I'm looking. Florida State's not even in the honorable mention. There's others that receive.
They certainly shouldn't be.
And no, they shouldn't. I think that kills. They're done this year. I mean, I know you can have a team get in with multiple losses, but after what we've seen from them the first 2 weeks, there's nothing there that leads me to believe that they can run the table and finish, 9-3, 10-2, or whatever. I just don't
make this make sense to me. Oregon, right, had a close game against Boise State. They dropped 2 spots. Penn State has a close game against a Bowling Green and doesn't drop at all. Like, the hypocrisy of the mainstream media blows my mind, right? I mean, like they don't rank the G5 at all, and then when a Power 4 school team loses to the G5, they act like the world's going crazy. So what is it? Does the G5 suck? if they suck, then why are you hitting Notre Dame so bad? But it just like I don't know, like they act like the G5 sucks, and then they act like Notre Dame sucks because they lost to G5, and then they still rank Notre Dame. Like it just I don't know, it just seems very hypocritical to me.
I can't stand how they handle Notre Dame anyway as an independent, because clearly the other independents, what few there were, they're making moves to try to join a conference, and I think that's what you should do. The NCAA, if they're going to do one thing right, or the college football playoffs, whoever's doing this, they should say, hey, if you want a big seed, you're going to get treated as an at-large at best, unless you join a conference and prove your worth. And they just won't do it. They'll let Notre Dame run the table, and they'll give them a top 4 thing if they've got the record. I don't get it. They need to be in a conference.
Here's an example that my buddy Andrew Katz sent to me earlier today. The Mackey Award, right? The Mackey Award is the top tight end in the nation. Guess who the tight end of the week was? Tyler Warren from Penn State. Who did Penn State play? Bowling Green. Guess who was honorable mention?
Bowling Green.
Guess who was honorable mention? Tight end Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, who played Penn State. So, like, if Penn State's so great, if they're so great, and that defense is so great, and he had 11 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown, versus Tyler Warren, who was going against the crappy Bowling Green team, had 8 catches for 146 yards. Tell me why Harold Fannin Jr., tell me why that wasn't more impressive. He did it against the Penn State defense. Like, it just, like, I don't know. I'm just fired up, man. Like, it's BS is what it is.
You are. Hey, you're fired up. I'm just letting you roll with it, man. You just get it out there. But I agree with you. These rankings it's crazy. And I'm with you. You get me fired up when you start talking about Notre Dame, because I believe they are treated so differently from every other team for no reason. I don't give a shit if you are a brand name or a brand school. Tennessee is in a conference. Ohio State's in a conference. Michigan, all these teams are in a conference. If you want a piece of that pie, if you want to be able to get that chunk of pie, then your ass needs to be in a conference. Now, I'm not saying their schedule's completely weak, but I think if they were in a conference, it would be a lot better. It would solve all these problems, and I wouldn't have a problem with Notre Dame being in wherever they land. But just to be an independent because you don't want to join, I don't get it. It fires me up. But yeah, some of these rankings, it's crazy. Ohio State, Iowa State's in at 21 after beating Iowa. Clemson is up 3 spots to 22. Choppy, our good buddy Choppy, his Huskers are in at 23. Good to see them, and Ravioli making away.
I think everybody outside of Boulder, Colorado, was a Nebraska fan this past week, right? I mean,
yeah.
And Dougie,
and while we're on Colorado,
Dougie likes Colorado.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
everyone in Boulder and Dougie are not. We're not rooting for Nebraska, but everybody else was rooting for Nebraska.
Yeah, and Dougie's got Alabama was in a fight with UCF. Yeah, stays at 4. Yeah, I agree. That was they were sweating that down there.
I mean, they sweated last year. Was it last year? Wasn't it like 13-10 last year? Alabama beat them 13-10 or something. Something like that.
I think it was. Yeah. And while we've got Dougie, maybe he can enlighten us. Did you see the news that supposedly it's not true, but the report come out that Deion told the Colorado band that they couldn't play their fight song after each Shadur score, that they had to play his album, one of the songs off his album.
God.
He's saying that's not true.
Oh, my God. Are you serious? Like, seriously.
Yes, I saw that.
Oh, my God. Like, I don't know. Like, Colorado, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what they think, right? Like, they're gonna like I can just see this whole thing backfiring on them, right? But I mean, they're gonna say, "Hey, we had a good 2 years of publicity or 3 years, whatever it was." But
see,
but man, like, oh my god, like because
now,
like
I've not officially saw that. I saw it 2 or 3 different places, and then I come out sometime today before I left to come home. Um, I saw a couple of reports that said that that wasn't true, but I haven't had time to really dig in and see. But yeah, when I first saw it, it was like, yeah, he's told the band that they can't play the school fight song after a Shadur or touchdown, but they have to. I forget the name of the song, one of the songs on his album, but that's what he requested to be played. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You're up here as a college coach about to get your ass handed to you because you don't have the players or the coaching or anything else right now, and you're worried about what song the band plays after a touchdown. Really?
yeah.
It's just it's insane. But yeah, that's the AP poll. I was kind of looking here. Boise, they're sitting at 27. Uh, Liberty's like at 36 as far as the votes go. A little interesting, but yeah, I agree. These teams that struggled that didn't move, are they? That's clearly based around their name, right? Like Alabama struggled, they didn't move. Penn State, trailed into the third quarter, they didn't move. Some of these others, I promise you, if it was Tennessee struggled like that, they'd be out of the top 25 because everybody hates Tennessee, but that's okay. Um, so I guess you are up. We'll look at the schedule for week 3 at the end here if you want to go over our scores.
Yeah, so week 1 in our listener league, I'll go over like the top scores, and the very first one, I'm going to preface this by saying how, much to our friend Dougie's chagrin, we handle players like Travis Hunter a little bit different than some places do, and we do that because, hey, he legitimately plays offense and defense, right? Hollywood and I talked about this before the season, and we said, hey, if a guy legitimately plays both places or legitimately plays on defense, like, then he deserves credit for everything he does. And so we count his offensive stats. Now, conversely, if a player does not really play defense, but they have defensive eligibility, then we won't allow that. There is a starting quarterback for a team in the Big 12 that Fantrax gives safety or defensive back eligibility to. Clearly, the kid's not playing safety. He's clearly a quarterback. And so in that case, like, we wouldn't allow that, right? Because that's just not, that's not the real intent, right? That's not, it's BS. So having said that, Travis Hunter was the top scoring cornerback in week 1. He scored 44.2 points. He did have 3 solo tackles that week. Now, if you want to get rid of Travis Hunter, the top scoring cornerback, again, this guy's not a cornerback either. He's a safety, but he has cornerback eligibility on Fantrax. That would be Trey Rucker from Oklahoma State with 24 points. The top person that was started at safety. This is a blast from the past here, Hollywood. Someone that, started off his freshman year, was awesome, then got injured, transferred to Texas, got injured, transferred down to the G5, is now at UNLV. Jalen Catalon. He had 37.2 points in week 1. The top linebacker, also from UNLV in week 1, Jackson Woodard with 36 points. Now, moving to the defensive line, the top defensive end was Kyle Kennard from South Carolina with 23.5 points. And the top defensive tackle was Iowa's Aaron Graves with 22.8 points. If I remember correctly, I think he had Graves had 2 sacks in that game. I don't think he did much this past week, but he had four solo tackles and 2 sacks in that game in week 1 in our listener league. Now go to our listener league and look at players not rostered. The top safety was Christian Ellis, New Mexico, 49 points. Cornerback Stephen Hall, Washington State, with 40 points. Linebacker Keaton Thomas from Baylor with 31 points. And let's see, it's fine. The top defensive tackle was Javari Ritzy, North Carolina, 26 points.
There we go.
It was just Hollywood's player of the week. And then the top defensive end was edge Will Helt from Purdue with 25 points. I don't know, like in week 1 and week 2, especially in IDP leagues, like so much changes, right? In terms of, folks adding guys, dropping guys, just because, I mean, I think people would call me in Hollywood experts, whatever. I don't consider myself an expert, but like,
yeah, me neither.
But the point being is that we miss things. Like I just said, like Steven, I was super high on Stephen Catledge, and he's done jack squat. So I think the key is, like, I don't know. My key is, like, I don't spend a lot on defensive players. Like, I just don't. It's so volatile of a position. I spent a last round draft pick on Stephen Catledge. And he busts. Cool. I just picked somebody else up. It's way better than spending a round 2 pick or a top 10 pick or what I'm saying, and those guys bust. And so I don't know, like, that's just kind of like my philosophy in terms of IDP. I just don't, generally speaking, I don't spend up. Moving on
I couldn't spend high on him if I wanted to, if Dougie's in the league with us.
Right.
And I will say before you move on, the first couple weeks of the season, don't overreact to what you see, right? Like, I'll use my Vols for example. The last 2 weeks have been nothing but just absolute blowouts, and they're playing 70, 80
Oh, yeah.
They're playing nearly everybody on the roster. So if you see a name and you're like, oh my God, who's this? Let me go grab him. Well, don't get accustomed to him doing that every week, because that's just a product of Tennessee or whoever being good and blowing out and him getting playing time.
Or the converse, right? Where the Tennessee, like, for instance, we'll use this as an example. James Pierce. James Pierce ain't really done squat, right? So you go and drop James Pierce, but you got to understand, like, he ain't going to do much because he ain't playing a ton, because the games are out of hand, right? But we see it time and time again where folks drop someone because they didn't do anything, and they have no they're just like, all they're doing is they're box score surfing, right? That's all they're doing, right? They're not taking the time to understand, like, what happened in this situation. Why did James Pierce not do anything? Well, the game is 53-0 in the second quarter or whatever it is, right? He's not, like, why are you going to risk James Pierce going out there and getting injured? You're not going to do it. I'll give you an example.
And
this isn't a defensive player, but in our listener league, someone dropped Ricky White after week 1. Ricky White was a round 1 draft pick in pretty much any college fantasy football draft you were in. He did nothing. He had like 1 catch for 10 yards in week 1. The owner dropped him. Guess what happened in week 2? He had freaking 110 yards and 3 touchdowns, and you gave him away for free. Like, people have to pay attention. Like, you just can't do things like that, man. Like, you can't if the guy is a stud, you have to be patient, right? At least give him 2 weeks, right? Like, if he's a bust after week 2, I understand it's a short season, move on. But man, you can't you can't be dropping first-round draft picks like after you can't be overreacting and dropping a first-round draft pick after one poor game. But it
somebody
happens
asked me
all
why
it happens
Pierce
all the time.
rated so high or ranked so high, and I was like, dude, just because he's not getting sacks or like you said, stat watching doesn't mean that he's good. He's, when you listen to the radio today, they were talking about it, local radio, and they're like, Rodney Garner, the defensive line coach, he's like, look, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He is shutting down in the run, right? He's not getting the sacks, but he's making everybody around him better. And my rankings, I'm not just going to drop him down for that because he didn't get a sack, because this is the kind of stuff that NFL is looking for, right? They're looking at like, how effective are you when you are not getting the play, when you're not getting the big sack or the big TFL or the interception? What is it you're doing, and how are you impacting the game? And that's why I keep him so high, because these rankings are also not just for college, but it alludes to their NFL potential too. So you can't really, you might get by with it some doing the box scores searching, but it's not going to tell you the whole story.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and you're going to get burned by it, right? Like, I don't know. I've seen it. You see it time and time again where guys just overreact, and they overreact on both ways, right? They overreact on somebody and pick them up,
Yep.
And then they overreact on someone else because they didn't do good and drop them. Like it happens. It happens pretty regularly. And
I missed the Ricky White drop too. I did not know that happened.
Oh, I saw it. But
that's crazy.
I was the high scorer and I won week 1, so I was last in claim. So someone else got him before I could, but I certainly put a claim in for him. Someone else besides me
that's crazy.
didn't miss it because they also put in a claim. I don't remember who it was, but someone else got him in the league. I didn't get him, but stuff like that happens like every year, so I don't know, when you're in your leagues, you need to go through and be looking at this transaction history, who was dropped, because like
that's why I always say that no matter what league you're in or who you're playing with, you never know. Go through the waiver wire. You never know.
Absolutely. I mean, like I've messed up before. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Hollywood, but sometimes like Fantrax, like it's really laggy and buggy, and I click on so-and-so player, and it's so laggy and takes so long that it thinks I clicked on another player, and then I don't notice it as far as a drop goes. And that happened to me one time in our listener league. I dropped I don't remember who. Kalen Laybourne, the running back from Marshall, who was like the top 2 or 3 running back in college fantasy football that year, but I didn't notice it, and I didn't notice it until after like the waiver went through, and I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't drop." I did. That's not who I clicked on. I clicked on another player, but sometimes Fantrax can be laggy, and it thought I clicked on him, and that's who got dropped. And man, like, yeah. So that's another warning for folks when you're doing that. Make sure it matches up before you hit submit. And don't just hit submit, because sometimes it's happened to me a couple times where it just lags so bad that it picks the wrong player, and I'm like, oh shit, and I have to go back and fix it. That time I didn't catch it. But yeah. All right, let's move on to week 2 in our listener league. The top cornerback that this week was Aiden White, and Dougie can celebrate on this one because Aiden White only plays defense. He does not play offense. Having said that, Travis Hunter was the number 2 cornerback this week. He was not number 1 though. Aiden White had 35.4 points this week for NC State. The top linebacker was someone that Dougie owns, Nicholas Martin, Oklahoma State, 31.5 points. The top defensive tackle, Keldrick Falk from Auburn. He had 2 sacks in the game, 7 solo tackles. Great game for him. The top safety was Donovan McMillan, Pittsburgh, 25 points. He had 10 solos. The top defensive tackle, again, he's not really a defensive tackle, but he has defensive tackle eligibility. And Fantrax was, an ex-Tennessee Vol, Tyler Barron, Miami of Florida. And I don't know, like to me, his performance is kind of fool's gold. He only had 3 tackles, and 2 of those tackles were sacks. That's why he scored a lot, right?
Right.
You can't bank on 2 sacks every week, right? At least I'm not banking on that.
Right.
But
No, I
nonetheless,
wouldn't either.
he was the high guy for defensive tackles this week for week 2. Now moving over to players that were not owned. The top safety, Dylan Lawrence from Southern Miss, 40.6 points. The top cornerback, a Tennessee Vol, Will Brooks, 36 points. Top linebacker,
pick 6.
What's that?
I said he had a pick 6 on Grayson McCall.
That must be where the majority of his points come from, because he only had 1 assisted tackle.
They got pressure on him, and he got a little rattled and threw it high, and the rest is history. So
Teddy Buchanan's top linebacker from Cal with 33 points. And the top defensive lineman, top defensive end is Obi Zigbo, Oklahoma State, 24.5 points. And the top D tackle is Devontae O'Malley, Northern Illinois, with 19 points. So those are the top free agents, so to speak, based on week 2 stats in our listener league. And I want to say, I could be wrong, but I don't have the spreadsheet open, but I'm pretty sure Sal has had the top defensive scorers both weeks in that league.
I think he has too.
Let me see if I can open that up.
And he can stop at any time now.
I'm opening up our spreadsheet right now. So week 1, the top score. Well, Iowa had 138, but I'm pretty sure Sal had a higher total than that. Actually, no, it's not Sal. It's Todd. Todd was the top one in week 1. He had 207.5 points. Of course, the bulk of that came. He owns Travis Hunter, so that's where the bulk of those points came. Like 25% of his points came from Travis Hunter. If you don't want to include the cheat code known as Travis Hunter, then the top Sal would be the top. Sal had 143 points. If you look at week 2, let's see. Sal had 159 points in week 2. Iowa did good as well, 154. I had 192. And so that was the high. So actually, I was the highest. Sal, but I think if you look at points so far, like to date in the league, Sal will be number 1, because Sal was I think the most consistent in the 2 weeks. So props to Sal for being on top of his defensive players.
Well, he's only that good because he listens to our wonderful advice that we give him. That's why he's so good.
Absolutely, yes.
No,
Sal asked us lots.
He's always asking questions.
Yep, he asked lots of questions, and we appreciate him, and we appreciate his support.
Yep, we sure do. Anything that you're looking at for week 3? I know we've got. I'm trying to see what kind of.
I'm still looking for a defensive tackle in that league. They're just hard to come by, man. Gosh, they are so hard to come by. Again, especially ones that are productive. Absolutely. Like I'm still in 2 leagues I'm in. I'm still feeling the repercussions of like just waiting too long on a defensive tackle. Yeah, like I don't know, like all those things I talked about before just confirmed. Like defensive tackle is super thin, linebacker is super deep,
Right.
right? Like you don't have to spend up on a linebacker
Yes.
for college production. It's just stupid deep. Um, but defensive tackle, on the other hand, not so much. And so, yeah, lesson learned on my behalf. I'm sure next year I will overreact and I'll draft them too early. But hey, you know that's what happens, right?
It happens. Right. Um, Speaking of week 3, just kind of looking at the schedule, you've got number 14 Kansas against number 20 Arizona. It's not a top 25 matchup, but you've got fourth ranked Alabama against Wisconsin. Um, Boston College, number 24 versus number 6 Missouri. We kind of touched on that. Uh, Here's a rivalry game, which is kind of weird because they're not in the conference no more, but number 9 Oregon versus Oregon State. And you have, I was trying to see. Oh, I meant to ask you, and I know this is not IDP. Did Cam Rising get hurt? I noticed he had something with his fingers.
He must have, because I saw Isaac Wilson starting this week.
Well, see, that was my question because I was flipping back and forth between the games, and I seen he was out. And I was like, what's going on? And I showed him on the sideline. It was his first and his pointer and index finger. He had, or middle finger, sorry. He had those two kind of holding them. So and they didn't say how severe it was, and I was flipping back and forth and forgot to check back. So it may be a little worse than we thought if he's not playing this week. But man, that sucks for Utah. If he misses any significant time, I think that hurts their chances. I think. And that kind of does it for the top 25 matchups. There's not a whole lot going on. Purdue plays Notre Dame.
Is
I
there
mean,
any
you've
other
got
matchups that kind of I guess interest you just in general? I tell you one, like I'm super interested to see, just because I love the G5, is the Thursday night matchup between Arizona State and Texas State, right? The both teams are 2-0.
yes.
Arizona State's playing better than expected. Texas State is playing well, and so super interested to kind of see how that game plays out. Obviously, I'll be at the Virginia Tech Old
I guess
Dominion
I'm a
game.
little interested in. Yeah, I guess I would be a little interested in the Memphis Florida State game. It's a noon game, especially with the start that Florida State's had. If they ain't real careful, they're going to be 0-3 because Memphis can score some points on you.
Well, that game's kind of flipped, in my opinion. So before the season, it was an upset that we called on the G5 High. We said beat Florida State in week 3, and it's going to be a huge win for them, propel them to the playoffs. Well, like at this point, it would not be a huge win. It's flipped. It would be a huge loss if they lose to Florida State.
Oh yeah,
That's going to damage them, and because people are going to say, "Well, Florida State's terrible, and you couldn't beat them, and so you don't deserve to be in the playoffs." So it's still a big game
right.
for Memphis, but it's a big game for an entirely different reason. Before, it would be a big win, right? Like preseason,
Exactly.
it'd be an awesome win. We won against this ranked P5 P4 team, and now it's like, you can't lose, because if you lose, like, you're screwed, because people are going to say, "Oh, you lost to a crappy Florida State team."
Dougie says Florida State fans aren't even excited for the Memphis game. Well, that's what you get for being Florida State fans. But hey, just saying.
But yeah, like
Um,
yeah, that one's interesting, but it's just interesting how that dynamic changed, right? From hey, this would be a great win for Memphis,
right.
to hey, this is going to be a bad loss for Memphis, right?
All right. And I'm
Yeah,
here for it. I hope Memphis beats the brakes off of them. I talked about the Oregon State game, but there's
Yeah,
also Washington State Washington. So the
those are
Pac-12
always big
disbanded,
rivalry
but
games.
yes, yes. Another game that I'm kind of curious to see how plays out is Texas A&M at Florida.
Yeah, I was just going to
Um,
mention that.
apparently, it's DJ Lagway season, so
Right. Is DJ Lagway going to get the start again? I haven't. I don't know. Well, let me look on
from
this.
what I've
This.
seen, it looks like he's going to start.
So Graham Mertz is not listed on the injury report, though. Graham Mertz is not on this injury report for Florida. So
that's interesting. Trying to roll down through here. Virginia Tech at Old Dominion. Y'all should beat them. Come on, you got to beat them.
no, man. I mean, it's I don't. I would love for that to happen. I don't think it'll happen. But I'm here for it, baby. I'm here for it. I will say this: Virginia Tech has never. They have never beat Old Dominion in Norfolk. At home, Old Dominion is 2-0 against Virginia Tech. Flip that, and Old
There we
Dominion's
go.
0-2 or 0-3 at Blacksburg. They have never beat Virginia Tech at Blacksburg. So the history of this series is the home team always wins. But there's I mean, the year, I don't know, the first year we beat Virginia Tech was ranked 15th. Old Dominion was 0-2. They had just gotten blown out by either an FCS Liberty team, or it might have been Liberty's first year in the FBS. I don't recall that exactly, but they weren't the team they are today, back then. And I mean, and they got blown out. It was like 59-10 or something. And then they're 0-2. They come to
Right.
Norfolk, and Old Dominion like pulls off, like, I think ESPN would tell you, like, it's the biggest upset of all time. And beats Virginia Tech and beats them pretty handily, pretty comfortably. I feel like, it wasn't like it was a 1-point game. And then we beat them in Norfolk 2 years ago as well, in another tight game. And so, I don't know, strange things happen when we play Virginia Tech. So I won't rule it out, and I certainly hope it happens. But I certainly don't expect it to happen, I guess, is the best way to say it. It'll be a nice surprise if it does.
Right. And look, yeah. And looking at the schedule, and this reminded me, so I'm glad we did this because this reminds me, and I'm going to remind you, bye weeks are heavy starting this week now. There's a lot of teams that are not playing this week, so make sure you're checking your rosters and don't have a player in there that's on a bye. Kind of looking at the schedule, the nightcap is not very strong. Like your 7 o'clock on, you've got some power hitters like Texas and Tennessee and Nebraska, and uh, you've got some teams like Georgia plays late, but they're not really playing teams that's going to put up a fight. I guess out of that group I just read, Georgia at Kentucky could be, but Georgia's going to stomp them. If they can't get past South Carolina, who's
I mean, that Toledo,
basically the worst team in the league.
The Toledo Mississippi State game could be interesting. It's a 7:30 start. Colorado State. Colorado State was entertaining last year.
Yeah. You've got BYU, Wyoming at 9. There'll be some good games, but it's not the high profile matchups that we've seen. So,
Yeah.
But there'll be some good games on. I think you'll see somebody somewhere will get upset. So I don't know who that is.
Well, I think me and Luke predicted at least 3 G5 over P4 upsets this week. At least 3.
Oh, do tell.
I guaranteed 2. I guaranteed there'd be at least 2.
Now I gotta hear that.
I mean, we didn't talk about who specifically would win, but I'll share with you some of the ones that that we liked. Let Let's see here. Let me find our show sheet from the other night.
I know you're not crazy about them, but I'm telling you, Missouri better be worried about Boston College. If they go in there and don't and try to overlook them or whatever, Boston College will beat their ass.
So some of the ones that we liked were Arizona State at Texas State, UNLV at Kansas, Oklahoma State and Tulsa, just because that's a rivalry. Memphis at Florida State, Cincinnati at Miami, North Texas at Texas Tech, Tulane at Oklahoma, Toledo at Mississippi State, Colorado at Colorado State, and Rice at Houston. Those were the ones we kind of liked. And so I don't know. I feel like I would feel comfortable in saying I would guarantee 2 wins for the G5, but I feel comfortable with 3. I couldn't tell you which games they're going to be for sure, but I just think
I think there'll be some
general,
upsets this week. I'm not sure who it'll be, but I can see a couple upsets. Anything else you've got that you want to talk about? I think we've pretty much covered everything. Like I said, I know we missed last week, but that was my fault. I just wasn't able to get it together to do. But we'll be back every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So if you've got questions, if you've got trades, if you've just got comments like our boy Dougie does, drop by, hang out with us, shoot those over to us. We're always glad to help. I do want to say, please continue to. My brain just went blank. Please continue to help us to grow. Right? Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Discord. That we got chats going on over there. Of course, follow us on YouTube. But also, I want you to check out the G5 Hive that Justice and Luke does. Man, such a great show. That's one of my favorites. I watch every little short, every little interview, everything you guys do. I watch it. I'm like, dang, Justice is going to slip up and give me one that he ain't going to mean, and I'm going to write that sucker's name down. But yeah, y'all do great work on that show. So y'all everyone go check out at G5 Hive. Follow them on YouTube. Same with us at Devy IDP Grind. Wherever you listen to podcasts, and we're everywhere: Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Podbean, all the iTunes, all that. Go check us out there. Leave a rate. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Do the same thing over at YouTube. And again, if you have any questions, just hit me and Justice up. I mean, Sal wears us out all the time with questions. So, and we're more than glad to help. I mean, it just, to me, when I help somebody, I want them to be good because I think if I'm in a league with them, it makes the league even better, right? So, but yeah, I'd love to check that out. Go over and check out the Patreon. Season's here. All the NFL stuff will be coming. You'll see the IDP Devy stock market, which I'll try to have tomorrow. I'm working on the rankings right now, getting those updated. Just all kinds of stuff. So go over there and check that out. We'll be back next week for looking at week 3. Can't wait. Make sure you check your bye weeks. Make sure you're checking your injuries. And with that, we will be back next week.